Picture this, it's the dead of winter, snow blankets the fields, and while most of us are huddled inside binge watching our favorite shows, the Amish are out there casually harvesting fresh vegetables. No greenhouses, no fancy equipment, just good old-fashioned know-how. How do they do it? Are they secretly wizards of agriculture? Spoiler alert, kind of. Welcome to the fascinating world of Amish gardening where tradition meets innovation, but in the most minimalist way possible. Today we're pulling back the curtain on how these masters of simplicity manage to grow veggies all year round without so much as a heated greenhouse or a grow light. You might think it's just vegetables, right? How complicated could it be? Well, let me tell you, the Amish have a few tricks up their plain black sleeves, and they're all rooted, pun intended, in centuries of agricultural wisdom. Why does this matter? Besides the obvious envy of having fresh carrots in January, learning from the Amish can teach us a thing or two about sustainability, resilience, and working with nature instead of fighting it. Plus, it's just plain cool to see how they've outsmarted modern agriculture with techniques that are as old as time. So buckle up, because this isn't just a story about veggies, it's a peek into a lifestyle that defies the odds and thrives in every season. Let's dig in literally. For the Amish, soil isn't just dirt, it's a living, breathing ecosystem, and they treat it like royalty. Imagine if your garden soil was as pampered as a celebrity at a five-star spa, constant attention, the finest nutrients, and a never-ending care routine. Their approach starts with composting, but not the haphazard kind where you toss in leftover banana peels and hope for the best. No, Amish composting is an art form. They meticulously layer animal manure, kitchen scraps, plant clippings, and ashes from their wood stoves to create compost that's practically glowing with life. It's like making a gourmet lasagna, but for worms. And they don't stop there. To ensure the soil stays balanced, they test its pH levels the way we test cake batter, frequently and with care. A little acidic? Add lime. Too alkaline? Mix in organic matter. They keep the soil in perfect harmony, which is why their gardens thrive while ours might struggle. Here's a fun tidbit: Amish farmers even let the soil rest every few years, planting cover crops instead of vegetables. Think of it as giving your soil a well-deserved vacation. Next, let's talk crop rotation. For the Amish, planting the same thing in the same spot every year is a big no-no. Why? Because it's the fastest way to exhaust the soil and invite pests to party. Instead, they rotate crops with the precision of a chess grandmaster planning their next move. For example, if they grow corn one year, they might follow it with nitrogen-fixing plants like beans or clover. The beans replenish the soil, while the clover acts as a natural fertilizer. This practice isn't just smart, it's sustainable. And it's not random either. They plan rotations years in advance, factoring in everything from soil health to pest control. Imagine juggling all these variables and still making it look effortless. Here's where it gets fun: the Amish even consider which plants like each other. For instance, they'll plant tomatoes next to basil because they believe it enhances flavor and repels pests. It's like matchmaking, but for vegetables. While the rest of us are Pinteresting ideas for DIY raised beds, the Amish are building them with whatever's on hand: logs, stones, old planks. Their beds may not be Instagram worthy, but they work like a charm. The genius of raised beds is in their practicality. Better drainage? Check. Warmer soil in early spring? Check. Fewer weeds? Triple check. It's like upgrading your gardening setup to a premium model without the hefty price tag. The Amish often top these raised beds with cold frames, simple structures made of wood and glass that trap heat. Think of them as cozy blankets for plants during chilly months. These cold frames extend the growing season by weeks, if not months, letting them harvest vegetables long after the rest of us have given up. If you thought you needed fancy gadgets to grow great vegetables, think again. The Amish use hand tools that are as timeless as their traditions. Hoes, rakes, spades. They've perfected the art of using simple tools to do complex work. These tools aren't just functional, they're built to last. Many Amish families pass them down from generation to generation, which is why their tools often outlive us. Imagine using a hoe your great-great-grandfather used. It's like holding a piece of history in your hands. And don't think for a second that this makes their work easier. Amish farmers can spend hours tilling, planting, and weeding by hand, proving that dedication beats innovation when it comes to gardening. Before they even plant a seed, the Amish map out their gardens with military-level precision. They consider everything: sunlight exposure, soil conditions, spacing, and even wind direction. It's like they're planning a tactical operation, not just a garden. For example, they might place taller crops like corn on the northern side of the garden to avoid shading smaller plants. Or they'll strategically plant windbreaks to protect delicate vegetables from strong gusts. It's these small details that make a big difference. One of the coolest tricks in the Amish playbook is companion planting. They pair plants that naturally help each other grow, like beans and corn or carrots and onions. This not only improves yields but also reduces the need for pesticides. And it doesn't stop at pairing. The Amish often grow herbs like mint and marigold alongside their vegetables because they repel harmful insects. It's like creating a tiny ecosystem where everything works in harmony. Perhaps the most impressive part of Amish gardening is how sustainable it is. They don't rely on synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, or fancy machinery. Instead, they work with nature, using methods that have been refined over centuries. Their commitment to sustainability isn't just about growing vegetables, it's a way of life. From reusing seeds to conserving water, every aspect of their gardening process is designed to minimize waste and maximize efficiency. So what have we learned? that the Amish approach to gardening is a perfect mix of tradition, innovation, and a whole lot of hard work. They've mastered the art of preparing their gardens for success, proving that you don't need modern technology to grow vegetables year-round. You just need a deep connection to the land and a willingness to put in the effort. Up next, we'll uncover how they navigate the challenges of unpredictable weather, proving that even Mother Nature can't outsmart the Amish. Stay tuned. Before anything gets planted or harvested, there's a whole lot of prep work. The Amish treat their vegetables to be like VIP guests at a luxury spa. Think exfoliation, hydration, and a little bit of pampering. First, they prep their seeds. Seeds are often cleaned, sorted, and sometimes even soaked to encourage germination. It's like waking them up gently, saying, "Hey, little guy, time to grow." Once the seeds are ready, the soil gets its turn. Remember that pampered soil we talked about earlier? The Amish take extra care to remove rocks, weeds, and any other unwanted guests. They even aerate it by hand, ensuring it's loose and fluffy, perfect for root growth. If their soil were a mattress, it would be one of those super expensive memory foam ones. Fun fact, Amish farmers often use rainwater or well water to clean their produce post-harvest, ensuring it stays chemical-free. It's all about keeping things as natural as possible. Planting isn't just about tossing seeds into the ground and crossing your fingers. The Amish have this down to a science. They plant each seed with military precision, ensuring the right depth, spacing, and alignment. For example, they know that carrot seeds like shallow soil, while beans need to go deeper. They also respect each plant's personal space, ensuring they're not too crowded. It's like seating guests at a dinner party. You don't want anyone to feel cramped, but you also want them close enough to chat. And let's not forget about timing. Amish farmers pay close attention to the seasons, moon phases, and even weather patterns. They plant certain crops early in spring and others late in summer, ensuring a continuous harvest. It's the ultimate game of strategic planning. For vegetables that need preservation, the Amish have mastered the art of drying and hanging. Picture a barn filled with rows of herbs, peppers, and onions hanging upside down like little vegetable chandeliers. Here's how it works. They tie up the veggies and hang them in a well-ventilated area, often using strings or wooden racks. This method allows the produce to dry naturally, preserving its flavor and nutrients. It's simple, effective, and surprisingly beautiful. But there's a catch: the environment needs to be just right. Too humid, the vegetables might rot. Too dry, they'll shrivel up into unrecognizable husks. The Amish, of course, have perfected this balance. Pro tip: when drying herbs, they tie them in small bundles and hang them in the shade. Direct sunlight can cause the herbs to lose their vibrant color and flavor. Let's talk about salt. While most of us think of it as something to sprinkle on fries, the Amish use it as a preservation powerhouse. Salt draws out moisture, which helps prevent spoilage and enhances the flavor. For example, when fermenting vegetables like cucumbers or cabbage, the Amish create a brine using water and salt. The veggies are then submerged in this brine, where they undergo fermentation. It's like a magical transformation that turns plain cucumbers into tangy pickles or humble cabbage into delicious sauerkraut. Here's where it gets fun. The fermentation process produces bubbles, which is a sign that things are working. The Amish call it the fermentation dance, and it's oddly satisfying to watch. But there's a fine line between perfectly salted and overwhelmingly salty. The Amish recommend tasting the brine before using it if it makes you wince. It's too salty. Even the Amish face gardening challenges, but they've got solutions for pretty much everything. Problem pests are munching on your crops. Solution: the Amish plant marigolds or mint around their gardens to repel bugs. It's like a natural force field for vegetables. Problem: vegetables are growing too slowly. Solution: check the soil nutrients. Sometimes adding compost or manure can give plants the boost they need. Problem: weather isn't cooperating. Solution: cold frames and row covers come to the rescue, protecting plants from frost and extending the growing season. And if all else fails, the Amish believe in patience and perseverance. As one Amish farmer famously said, "Nature works on its own clock, you just have to keep up." Here are some fascinating tidbits about Amish gardening that you probably didn't know. The Amish rarely buy seeds from stores. Instead, they save seeds from their best crops each year, ensuring a continuous supply of high-quality seeds. They use companion planting not just for practical reasons, but also because they believe certain plants get along better than others. Some Amish families still use heirloom vegetable varieties that have been passed down for generations. If you're inspired to try Amish-style gardening, here are some beginner-friendly tips. Start small. Don't try to grow a massive garden right away. Begin with a few easy-to-grow vegetables like lettuce, radishes, or beans. Use what you have. The Amish are resourceful, often repurposing old materials for gardening. You can do the same by using leftover wood for raised beds or jars for seed storage. Be consistent. Gardening requires regular attention, from watering to weeding. Set aside time each day to care for your plants, wrapping up the process. The Amish approach to vegetable growing is a mix of simplicity, tradition, and ingenuity. From cleaning and preparing to planting and preserving, every step is done with care and purpose. And while it might seem like a lot of work, the rewards: fresh, delicious vegetables year-round, are more than worth it. In the next section, we'll explore how the Amish navigate the unpredictable whims of Mother Nature. Hint: it involves some truly clever tricks. Stay tuned. All right, you've got your vegetables prepped, planted, and hanging up like they're on display at a fancy farm-to-table restaurant. Now comes the part where you've got to test them. It's like a very unglamorous cooking show, except instead of a perfectly cooked steak, you've got hanging tomatoes that need to pass a squeeze test. Testing readiness. First up, let's talk about when your vegetables are ready to be harvested or preserved. The Amish have an age-old technique that involves a bit of touch and feel literally. For fruits and vegetables, they rely on the good old squeeze test. Yes, you heard that right. Gently give that tomato or pepper a squeeze. If it feels firm but not rock hard, it's ready. If you're squeezing like you're trying to juice an orange, you've gone too far. Or for things like herbs, the readiness test involves the aroma. If you're drying herbs like basil or thyme, just give them a little rub. If they release a strong, fragrant smell, they're good to go. It's like sniffing out the perfect cup of tea. It just feels right. Fine-tuning drying times. Next up is adjusting those drying times. This is where things can get a bit technical, but the Amish have a knack for keeping things simple. They pay attention to the weather, humidity levels, and even the time of day to decide when the best time is to start drying. Imagine a farmer pacing outside, checking the sky like a weatherman before deciding to pull the trigger on drying vegetables. Drying times can vary significantly depending on what you're drying. Tomatoes might be ready in a day or two, while things like onions or garlic might take a week or more. The key here is to find that perfect balance too dry, and you end up with veggie crackers too moist and they'll mold. It's all about the Goldilocks principle, just right. Pro tip, keep an eye on the weather forecast. If there's a humid spell coming, it's best to hold off on drying those herbs or veggies until the air clears up. The Amish know that some things just aren't meant to be dried in a damp environment. It's a lesson they learned the hard way, more than once. Now that you've got your vegetables preserved, it's time to fine-tune their flavor and texture. This is where the Amish's artistry really shines. They don't just dry vegetables, they create taste explosions that make supermarket produce look bland by comparison. Adjusting salt levels. Salt is a critical player in the Amish preservation game. Too much, and you might as well be chewing on a salt lick. Too little, and you've got nothing but bland vegetables. The Amish adjust salt levels based on taste. It's not an exact science, but more of a gut feeling they've honed over generations. If you're not sure, give it a taste test. Yes, like a cheese connoisseur, but with vegetables. For things like sauerkraut, the salt is essential for the fermentation process. Too much salt can kill the bacteria needed for fermentation, while too little can lead to spoilage. The Amish are experts at finding the sweet spot, ensuring that every batch of sauerkraut is just the right mix of salty, tangy goodness. Drying vegetables for texture. Texture is another area where the Amish excel. When drying vegetables, they're looking for that perfect balance between crispy and chewy. If you dry them too long, they'll be crispier than a potato chip. Not long enough, and they'll be about as chewy as a piece of bubble gum. For example, drying peppers is a delicate operation. The Amish will sometimes let peppers dry partially before finishing them in the sun. This process gives them a rich, concentrated flavor while maintaining a bit of chewiness. It's like getting the best of both worlds of flavorful, slightly leathery pepper that's still a bit juicy inside. Even with all the precision and experience in the world, things can go wrong. The Amish have seen it all and have the solutions to prove it. Here are some common issues and how they handle them with grace and humor. Problem: vegetables mold before they dry. Solution: if your vegetables are molding before they dry, the Amish say to blame the weather. High humidity levels can cause mold to form faster than you can say, not again. The solution: wait for drier weather or use a dehumidifier if drying indoors. The Amish have also been known to run a fan in the drying area to keep the air circulating and prevent mold. It's like creating a mini tornado for your vegetables without all the wind. Problem: the vegetables are too chewy. Solution: if your vegetables end up tougher than a leather boot, you've probably dried them too long. The Amish suggest giving them a rehydration treatment by soaking them in water before use. It's like reviving a raisin back into a juicy grape. For example, dried beans that are too chewy can be soaked overnight to soften them up again. Problem: the vegetables taste bland. Solution: the Amish will tell you it's all about timing. If your preserved vegetables taste bland, it's often because they didn't get enough sun or air during drying. In that case, try finishing them off in the sun for a few hours. Or they might suggest adding a bit more salt or even some herbs before drying to enhance the flavor. It's all about finding the right balance, like seasoning a dish to perfection. Finally, let's talk about the Amish's knack for innovation. They're not just preserving vegetables the old-fashioned way, they're making it work for them in the modern world. The Amish have taken their traditional methods and adapted them to suit today's needs, proving that old ways are sometimes the best ways. Cold frames and hoop houses. One of the more modern innovations in Amish gardening is the use of cold frames and hoop houses. These structures allow them to grow vegetables year-round, even in the middle of a harsh winter. A cold frame is essentially a small, unheated greenhouse just big enough to hold a few vegetable plants. It's like having your little slice of spring in the dead of winter. Fun fact: the Amish often use straw or hay to insulate their cold frames, trapping heat during the day and keeping it in at night. It's a clever, low-tech solution to year-round gardening that works surprisingly well. Hoop houses are larger, tunnel-like structures covered in clear plastic. They're like a giant cold frame, allowing for even more growing space. In the winter, they can grow lettuce, spinach, and other cold-tolerant crops right outside their homes. It's like having a personal farmer's market in their backyard all year round. The beauty of the Amish approach is not just in the vegetables they grow, but in the wisdom they pass down from generation to generation. They've found a way to make the most of what they have, adapting their gardening practices to the modern world while staying true to their roots. Whether you're an experienced gardener looking for new tips or a complete novice, there's something to learn from the Amish. Their methods are simple, effective, and deeply connected to the land. The next time you're enjoying fresh vegetables, take a moment to appreciate the meticulous care and attention that went into growing them, and maybe even share a little laugh over the Amish's quirky but incredibly effective gardening techniques. And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to try a little Amish gardening in your own backyard. Just don't forget to say blessing on your fields as you dig in. And there you have it. You've now unlocked the secret to growing vegetables year-round, Amish style. From testing readiness to fine-tuning your drying methods, you've journeyed through a world of squishy tomatoes, crunchy peppers, and even more surprising innovations. Who knew a little bit of salt, air, and patience could transform your garden game so dramatically? Let's take a moment to recap those key steps. Preparing your vegetables from slicing tomatoes to plucking herbs, every action is a small step towards a big reward. Setting up the drying space, whether it's a simple string across your backyard or a sophisticated cold frame, the setup is crucial. Testing readiness and drying time, squeeze, sniff, and judge like a seasoned chef, only with your veggies. Fine-tuning the flavor and texture, salt it right, dry it just so, and you've got yourself a batch of garden goodies that will knock your socks off. Innovations and adaptations, cold frames, hoop houses, these are the Amish's little secrets for growing year-round, right under their noses. Now, you're ready to dive into this gardening adventure yourself. Whether you're in a bustling city apartment or a quiet country homestead, these methods can be adapted to fit any space and any lifestyle. The Amish have proven that you don't need a fancy greenhouse to enjoy fresh veggies year-round, just a little creativity, some practical know-how, and a lot of good humor. So go ahead, try it out, share your experience with others, and maybe even start a little community garden of your own. And don't forget to comment below with your own tips, tricks, and funny gardening stories. After all, the more the merrier in this veggie-loving world.